Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Entrepreneurship Lab. This is your host, Nevena Bajalac, welcoming you once again to the podcast where we help you grow and scale your business. I hope you are ready to sharpen your negotiation skills because today my guest is Frank Carone, coming to us all the way from amazing New York City. And he is a legal and political strategist. And he's also an author of a book called Everyone Wins, and he is extremely experienced to help businesses, nonprofits, and entrepreneurs through complex challenges in different industries. So, Frank, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here.
It's such a pleasure to be here, Naveen, and it's a great pleasure to get to know you and your story and how well you're doing. And I congratulate you and continued success. I hope only the best. And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Frank. So the idea today, there is so many topics you're expert in, but I would love us to talk about negotiation playbook, right? Strategies, how we can achieve mutual success in any deal, because a lot of listeners are maybe just a medium size or startups, and negotiation is very important and learning how to go to that next level and close bigger deals. But before we go into negotiation, I would like to hear a little bit about your background as entrepreneur. How did you started? Have you always been entrepreneur or you've been in corporate world first?
Well, great question. And the older I get, the harder it is to get into my background because there's too much of it. When I was younger, it was a lot easier. But at 56 years old now, and starting so young, it's becoming quite a body of work. So some things I even sometimes forget. But I always had an entrepreneurial mindset and spirit. As a young boy, I always had this deep desire for financial freedom and freedom in general. So I always worked. We grew up in a very poor section of Canarsie. So although we had a lot of love in the household, we didn't really have any discretionary capital and just enough to put food on the table and nothing more. So whatever else I wanted, I had to kind of just struggle, win, fail, learn, continue. Struggle, win, fail, learn, continue. And even as a young boy, I would do everything I could, from selling newspapers to even collecting comic books that you see behind me and then selling them later on in life, selling Christmas trees on the streets during the holiday season, flowers during Mother's Day, and then creating one business after the other. And each one of them, whether they succeeded or failed, and it's all matter of perspective of the time, what is success or failure. I consider them all a success because even those that perhaps didn't have the results that I would have liked, I always learned a very valuable lesson, which then led me to a better opportunity later on, and I was able to be more astute and adept at recognizing that. So, it's really as you go through this journey of entrepreneurship, it's very important for folks to, remember um, there's always lessons to be learned, and really sometimes right behind what you thought was a great opportunity is an even better one, but for that failure that you learned from. So never ever lose hope and persevere, the most important word of it all. So yeah, I would say since a boy right through now, and my career started. I thought I would be a JAG officer, which is a lawyer for the United States Marine Corps. While I went to Officers Candidate School and law school. I was just telling this story the other day to someone. When President Clinton was elected in 1992, he was downsizing the military. So my seat in the Naval Justice School was shrinking. The pool of students that would be available for the Naval Justice School was shrinking. So I didn't have a place to live. I didn't have a job. And I couldn't make a commitment because I could leave any moment. And Major called me up one day and said, Lieutenant, we have 6 lawyers around the country and 4 seats. We're going to draw straws. If you are selected, are you ready to deploy? I said, yes, I am. I was all right, I'll call you back. Turns out I was not one of the straws picked. And that summer I was working in 2 different law firms. They offered me a partnership. So I wrote a letter to the Secretary of the Navy, received an honorable discharge, and my life went in a completely different direction in criminal defense world, where I started my legal career. That evolved into a 130-person government relations litigation law firm, the largest in the history of Brooklyn. And during that process, I became the lawyer for the Democratic Party in Brooklyn, which is, many people don't know this, but the largest Democratic county in the United States. So it was a huge responsibility and a labor of love. And therein, I got to know then Senator candidate, state senator candidate Eric Adams. He went on to become borough president. And as the lawyer for the party through three county leaders, obviously to develop relationships with all of these folks. And when he asked me to support him for mayor, I did and became part of the inner circle running the campaign. He then asked me to run the transition team together with him and the group, and it was a great privilege to do so after being victorious. And we put together a culture, we hired the team, and a mindset. And then he asked me to be chief of staff, and that was the greatest privilege of my adult life to be able to serve New York City as its leader, as chief of staff to the mayor, which would, if New York was a country, it would be the ninth largest on earth. So it was a great responsibility, one that I cherish, and one that I've made great friends, great experiences. So I've had a diverse career. I've been able to meet amazing people along the way, but I'm not finished yet. Who knows what the future holds? But I'm still working at it. And when we get into the negotiation topic, I have a very, very recent, relevant story just from this morning. So the timing is perfect.
Yeah, so thank you. I mean, amazing background, amazing experience. And I always like when we reflect and we see that, you had a plan to be working with the military and then being deployed, and that didn't work out, obviously, for a reason. And you been guided to a different path. And that's so interesting always when we reflect and there is something guiding us in a different direction. So yes, I would love to know like let's start with maybe a question. What is negotiation and what are maybe some myths that people feel about negotiation, and let's break those myths.
Yeah, I like how you phrase the question, what is negotiation? It's actually a thoughtful question when you phrase it that way. To me, it is when, everything in this life is not done, you don't do on your own, right? You need people to do. So negotiation is a seeking of a goal from both sides. And what is that goal depends on the circumstances, of course, and sometimes it changes, right? You may start a negotiation and realize an unforeseen opportunity because of the way that you've comported yourself in that negotiation. And it's very important. I think one of the myths that we learn is that it's a zero-sum game. You have to win at all costs, and you have to get better. You have to do better than the person you're negotiating with or the organization or entity. And that is a complete fallacy. And in our book, Everybody Wins, we talk about finding common ground so that your objectives will be achieved by your adversary achieving theirs. And the reason for that is it's very important to recognize that the long-term mindset of negotiation, and it is not to squeeze all the juice out of one, fruit, or take advantage of a situation, because they're all finite and limited. And if you play the long game, you'll realize that there is much more to gain by negotiating through the everybody wins philosophy, finding that common ground, than doing so in a zero-sum game mindset. So I think that is a myth that really needs to be dispelled. And you're seeing there's a lot of trend now through social media and others where folks are espousing that theory of, collaboration towards a goal, though, not, always with your eye on the goal, right? And you do so with humility and integrity, of course.
Yes, and I like that switch in the mindset, like you said, where we usually feel like we have to win, but it's actually reaching that kind of partnership and everyone achieving their objections. So if somebody is very new, or many people, startups, they feel nervous when they have to negotiate or they get a rejection, and they say negotiation starts when you get a no, basically, not before that. So where would you tell them to start, and how should they overcome that kind of feeling of fear going into a meeting where they know they have to negotiate, to also not feel frustrated, because a lot of people accept the terms they don't want just to get maybe the deal, and then after that I feel they get frustration. So how can they go into a meeting, achieve their objections, overcome the fear, and not leave, feeling like they didn't get the terms they wanted?
Yeah, so first of all, feeling that nervousness is natural. So you shouldn't be disappointed in yourself or feel inadequate or have any self-esteem doubts because you feel nervous going into a negotiation. Most people dislike conflict and they dislike disappointment and they're afraid to hear a no. Somehow a no is reflects upon the way you view yourself. So it's a perfectly natural emotion to feel. But if you go into a negotiation, and I myself get those feelings sometimes, even doing this for 35 years already, you still it's when a fighter gets nervous going into a match or an athlete in a big contest. It's perfectly normal. It's adrenaline getting your body ready to prepare. But if you change your mindset a little and you go into a negotiation with a goal in mind, but with the understanding that you know it may not work, and not because of ego, not because of stubbornness or reticence, but because it just may be there may be some other path for you, the way you described mine earlier, with thinking I'd be a career as a lawyer in the military, and all of a sudden I'm in a completely different path. So what you do is you have to enter a negotiation or even any conversation that leads to a negotiation with extreme empathy. Sometimes there's a phrase people use called tactical empathy. We really, really, really focus on listening. Empathy, the only way you could really demonstrate empathy is intent listening, eye contact, body contact. And very often we rush to respond without giving a person a complete opportunity to speak. The better course of action would be to inquire, repeat the questions back, repeat the statements back to the person you're negotiating with, and therefore take more feedback in. And when a person feels listened to, the whole tone of negotiation really settles down. And then you can start a more productive dialogue. So again, it goes back to a certain mindset, which is I'm going to not worry about a failure, but I'm going to worry about being honest, making sure my credibility is intact. I just want to digress for a moment on credibility. Folks who have a reputation for aggressive negotiating or aggressive behavior or litigious behavior usually do a lot worse, although they think they're doing a lot better, because your adversary is prepared for that and they don't trust you because there's no credibility. And when you have credibility and folks feel you're least, you may not agree, but what you're saying has truth to it. Okay, at least your best intent on seeking truth. It's much, much easier finding common ground than when there's a extreme distrust. This lends itself to the smallest of negotiations, all the way to countries negotiating a ceasefire. Right, it needs to be a modicum of trust. Very difficult, but you have to really, really, really make it a conscious effort to be credible over time. Over time, and you have your career starts expanding, you'll realize that lives with you, that credibility. It's a small, big world, but yet very, very small, and the reputation really, really lives with you. And specifically today with social media, where everyone just wants an answer in 2 seconds, someone's reputation really goes along with them, and it infects the conversation. So really, really be careful of being credible and negotiating in a high integrity way and manner, I should say.
Yeah, amazing tips. So I don't know if you're going to agree with me or disagree, but I believe, as someone who's been the whole life in sales and training people and consulting on sales, I believe sales are a skill, and I also believe negotiation is a skill, which means we can learn it. And if that's true, what are maybe can you share the best or your favorite technique or a strategy in negotiation, like something that people can maybe learn and use that you think it's simple but works very well?
Yeah, so we our book Everyone Wins was written in a user-friendly format. It's not, written with convoluted, high intellectual language, but in a way where it's simple and people can learn. And therein we talk about embracing relationships for the long term. So, and we differentiate between optimal relationships and transactional. Everything I've been saying falls into the category of optimal, meaning a relationship that could bear fruit in your life in one way or another over and over and over again. And I'm a perfect example of that happening. I'm amazed sometimes where opportunities come to me through relationships that I've built and I did not burn. And again, made sure I had extreme credibility, gave my colleagues the attention they deserved with eye contact, with empathy, as I said. So as you're learning how to enter a negotiation, first of all, prepare, right? I think that's a foundational platform. You don't go in unprepared, prepare. But think about every negotiation at the long-term consequences and what relationship are you building through this negotiation. Now, maybe we could think of some examples. They could be, the simple negotiating a lease for a new startup or hiring your first employee. Or it could be on selling a company when you're successful and or emerging with a company, or it could be as complicated as, you know, diplomacy, international diplomacy. All of the principles remain the same, which is, and I'll say it again, just listening carefully, finding common ground, and achieving your goals while the other side is achieving theirs. They're actually serving your own interest. But you can't do that without knowing what their interests are. And you can't do that without listening and establishing empathy. And you can't do that without credibility. So these are basic premises and basic concepts anyone could learn. The beauty of it is, I think you said it correct, Amanda. Anyone could learn.
Yeah.
Anyone can learn this process, and it is a process, a learnable one. Of course, you'll make some mistakes, but okay, it's natural, it's normal, and they're actually mistakes are usually an opportunity in disguise. I love to
Yeah.
say to people, the obstacle becomes the way. It's a famous quote from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor. Everyone quotes it now. There's actually a book called The Obstacle is the Way. Ryan Holiday, great book. But the point is not to get discouraged and just
Mm.
stay optimistic and keep because you'll be amazed what's behind the curtain.
Yes. So what is talking about mistakes? So what is the most common mistake you see people make when they're negotiating? Yeah, and they're losing deals, or maybe they're not aware of it. So what would you say? Of course, we talked about empathy and not caring and all those things, but maybe something we didn't mention that you really see is a mistake.
Oh, it's so easy. It just jumps right out at me. Ego. Biggest mistake. Ego. I'll give you a perfect example. A real there's a union, New York City union that I represent, and we were negotiating a renewal of a contract. Okay, there's law firms involved, there's politicians involved, there's agencies involved, and we came up with what I thought a terrific compromise. I'm going to speak at a high level so as not to betray any confidences. Although I wish I would love to give the real world example. And what has prevented the successful completion of this union contract, and the members would receive, much needed pay increases, much needed benefit increases, and it's not going to happen, at least today. I was hoping it would happen. It's going to happen at some point, but not today because of the ego of the union leadership and the ego of the agency head. And what does that mean? Well, they both feel offended by the asks and the written agreement, or they both feel offended that by the tone that the person took in the email or the letter that they wrote. Ego is a dangerous thing. I remember our first week in City Hall, and I talked about ego and working as a team. It takes great confidence to put ego aside. It takes great confidence. It's very difficult because we all want to feel injured and blame someone for a fault. So in this example this morning, unfortunately, because of the egos of some of these folks, rather than the substance, and there's really a pathway, simple pathway. It's so clear and everybody knows it. So be mindful of your ego, be mindful of how you react and your emotions. You just, it's going to happen. Let me say this, happens to me. It's always a mistake when it does, always. It still happens. And I work really, really hard at it. And it's going to happen to everyone. But it's an error. And it's good to know it, and it's good to recognize it, and it's good to be mindful of it so as to avoid it as best as you can. But we're human beings, we're creatures of emotions and of experience. And some days we feel good, some days we don't. You don't know the person you're going to get when you wake up in the morning. But it's again something that could be learned and with the correct discipline, controlled.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Frank. I like to ask this question to all entrepreneurs and experts. What is one thing you wish you know about building the business when you were younger that you had to learn maybe the harder way from experience and you wish someone told you so we can maybe share with the listeners?
Yeah, I found, setting a goal, whether it's numerical or otherwise, in writing, extremely, extremely invaluable in success of any endeavor. I recently have this conversation with my 22-year-old son. I ask him to write down the objective, and then you back into it. Okay, how do I achieve that objective? Right? Let's say it's a 1 year objective, a 3 year objective. Um, Whatever there it is, then you kind of work backwards. Okay, let's say there's just a hypothetical goal. You want the business to sell a certain amount of glasses, if that's your business, let's say online glasses, whatever. And you know what your margins are, your cost, your profitability. So taking that profitability and then you extrapolate it to get to the number that you want to achieve by year two. So, okay, then you then go backwards. How many do I have to do per quarter, per month, per week, per day? And now you have a blueprint. And then you measure it each week. Did I do what I needed to do? Did I make enough calls each day? Did I make enough, send out enough emails, or whatever it is, however it is you're marketing, what it is you're doing, or selling what it is you're doing? So written goals to me that are measurable and tangible are critical. You have to be able to measure it. And you can't do that without writing it down. You just don't react. Don't show up to work and move the papers around and feel I'm here, so therefore I'm doing something. Every day must be, specific. And when you control your day that way through written goal, you're amazed on how more efficient you become and focused. So it is the number one, I think, task of a young entrepreneur or a startup. Write down your objectives and your goals and then measure them continuously.
Yeah, and I remember I've been with so many mentors learning about business, and Bob Proctor is one of my favorite, and he was always the one insisting also and saying 99% of people don't have written goals. So we're going through life, and really I feel when we write them, it gives us some kind of focus that's different. And everything I wrote down, actually, it came true. And all my friends who are entrepreneurs and who understand this, they say, I found my old notebooks, everything I actually wrote down, it came. Maybe not in exact deadline or in the same way I wrote, but it happens. So, message for all of you listening, write down your goals, be specific, do reverse engineering, like Frank said, and play with the numbers, see what's going to take it for you to get there. And maybe it's going to come in a different way, but it's going to then happen. So, Frank, I would like to wrap up with asking you maybe to give a final advice to everyone listening About building a business, about negotiation, something that you find is crucial and important, and maybe we didn't mention.
Well, I think we covered a lot of general topics, and I just congratulate anyone who has the stamina and the courage to follow their dream and be an entrepreneur. It is the greatest endeavor in life, in my estimation. It allows creativity, and it is what it's building our societies together. This sort of creative energy. So, first of all, congratulations to undertake this career as an entrepreneur and creating. And so I will just leave the audience with a very basic, comment that persevere, be patient, never give up, do not get discouraged through any obstacle, because there will be. And remember the wise words of Marcus Aurelius: obstacle becomes the way, meaning sometimes you have to make a left turn or a right turn, but that turn is really the pathway to a pathway or a step necessary to achieve your goal, but requires constant perseverance and focus. Success demands a sacrifice, and that sacrifice is that perseverance and focus above all things. And keep that top of mind by writing down, as we said, your objectives and reverse engineering it. It stays top of mind. And if it doesn't, then put it somewhere where you're going to look at it every day and make it part of your routine. So, it's really a wonderful life as an entrepreneur, but it's not one that's going to come easy, nor should it. But it will be one that's rewarding. But just remember those setbacks. Don't get discouraged. They will be there. And if you're not doing something important, they wouldn't be there. We say sometimes in politics, if you're not getting criticized, you're not doing something right. So don't worry about it. Hang in, and you'll see there's a rainbow and a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Thank you, Frank, really for sharing all your wisdom, experience, and knowledge with us today.
My great pleasure to be here. I really enjoyed conversation and look forward to inviting me back another time.
Absolutely. And everyone, please go and connect with Frank Carone on all social media and go and get his book, Everyone Wins, and learn more about negotiation, about deals, and business. Thank you once again for listening. Make sure to give us some likes, hearts. Share this episode with at least one person that's going to benefit from it. And comment below what would you like us to talk about next. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.